Hi, I'm so glad that you have decided to join me for this webinar. And it's on breaking up with self-sabotage. It may seem like a kind of a strange thing, but how often have you sabotaged your results or whatever it is that you wanted in your life? And you couldn't figure out how come you didn't get it. So I want to take a moment to congratulate you for taking this first step toward letting go of that self-destructive, self-sabotaging behavior and moving forward into a happier, more fulfilling life. During our time together, we'll explore what self-sabotage is, why we partake of it, and how to fight back against destructive behaviors and form healthy habits instead. So my name is Michelle Nagel, and I'm really happy to be with you. And I used to be really, really good at self-sabotage. So in the interest of being the good little girl or the one that everybody got along with, I would do all sorts of things that ultimately kept me stuck so that I couldn't move forward in my life and accomplish the things that I wanted to accomplish. And it gave me a life that I did not want to live. So I would do self-sabotaging behaviors in order to not rock the boat. I wanted to make it so that other people just loved me. And so I would often put myself like completely last, the very last person on the roster. And by that time I was too exhausted and didn't have enough resources to give myself what I needed anyway. But I thought that that was the way to be. And I really wasn't happy with my life. So if that resonates with you, let's get started with the webinar. And I'm going to share my screen with you. And give me a second here because technology is always so much fun. And okay, oops, there we go with share. And we're going to do of course, I love it when you do this because then it tells you that you can't end up with, can't have the picture in the window at the same time. So we're going to do breaking up with self-sabotage. And right now I'm going to hide my screen, my picture, because that's distracting. And then we'll go ahead and continue with what's going on in the webinar. So behavior. Okay, so we're going to do breaking up with self-sabotage. And welcome again. And behavior is said to be self-sabotaging when it creates problems and interferes with long-standing goals. The most common self-sabotaging behaviors are procrastination, self-medication with drugs or alcohol, comfort eating, and interpersonal conflict. While these acts may seem useful and comforting at the moment, they ultimately undermine us, especially when we engage in them repeatedly. So even if you are aware of your self-sabotaging behaviors, there's no guarantee that that in itself will be enough to disengage from the act. Still, it is possible to overcome almost any form of self-sabotage, and people do it every single day. And so we're going to talk about how you can do it. Can you relate to any of the following? You tend to focus on what's not working as opposed to what is. You tend to fear the future, worry a lot about the what ifs and what might happen down the road. You feel like you have no value and find it challenging to recall accomplishments. You criticize yourself often and don't accept compliments. You compare yourself to others consistently, then feel bad for not measuring up. Usually we compare to Facebook, and that's always ridiculous because people only post the best things. You chase away relationships. If you are in a relationship, you quickly find flaws and faults in the other person, or you feel like you have no purpose in life. For some of it, these behaviors are all too familiar, and for others, they might seem to be a bit of a reach. Up next, we'll talk about actions and symptoms of self-sabotage that lurk a bit further beneath the surface. Under the umbrella of self-sabotage is self-destruction. Self-destructive symptoms can arise all of the time and are signs that we're trying to self-sabotage. And here are a few examples of behaviors. Failing to take action, Having a negative, pessimistic, or self-defeating mindset. For example, I'm going to fail, I just know it. Overeating, undereating, forced incompetence, which is portraying yourself as unintelligent or incapable. Women are more likely to do this than men. Bullying, if you're going out of your way to harm others. Self-harm, self-pity, drug and alcohol abuse, deliberately alienating yourselves from others, refusing help, spending too much, physical neglect, getting poor sleep, refusing to exercise, eating unhealthy foods, and failing to maintain basic hygiene are all signs of this. Mental neglect, refusing, avoiding, or failing to confront psychological health issues like anxiety, depression, OCD. We all go through up and downs, but if you find yourself returning to patterns of binge drinking, overeating, undereating, self-harm, physical neglect, or any of the other items on this list, you're likely that you find comfort in the habit and the harmful actions of self-sabotage. Now, as I went over that list, did you find any of those things that you could say, oh, wow, I'm doing that. I would never have thought of that of self-sabotage. I did. There are things that I definitely went and there's like, oh, I'm on that list. Oh, no. There are a few reasons that we participate in self-sabotaging behaviors, and perhaps the most all-encompassing is feeling a lack of self-worth. There are a million little factors that can contribute to our feelings of unworthiness, and it would take a dozen classes to cover them. But the concept of cognitive dissonance can help us understand more cumulatively. Cognitive dissonance refers to the tendency we have to seek consistency among our beliefs and opinions. Every time something doesn't make any sense, like when we're hurt or surprised by an action, we feel discomfort, and our brain compensates by creating a new reality that eliminates the dissonance. So how does this play out in terms of self-sabotaging behavior? Here's an example. Let's say you don't like someone you work with, but one day they run out to get coffee and ask if they can grab one for you too, their treat. After experiencing this exchange, you have two options moving forward. Number one, you change your opinion of them. Maybe they're actually kind of cool. Or two, you justify your previous opinion of them, saying they must be after something. I don't trust that they would do this or be this generous without an underlying agenda. So once you land on one of these options, your brain sticks to it. Your belief is either altered or strengthened based on what just occurred. Processing new information makes our brains work harder and throws a wrench in the inner workings of everything. Therefore, our first instinct is to come to a conclusion and move on, even if that means making a judgment that is not factually correct. Here's how cognitive dissonance and self-sabotage might play out in your romantic life. Let's say in one of your first romantic relationships, you were lied to, causing your brain to form the notion that romantic feelings are connected with hurt and distrust. As you progress through life and partake in various romantic relationships, you might have never truly gotten over this mistrust, even if your partner has never given you any reason not to trust them. You might start thinking to yourself, I trusted people once and look where it got me. Hurt. I am not falling for this again. Like in the previous example, your brain kept selecting option 2. I don't trust it. Your brain likes it when you fall into previous patterns because that's less cognitive work. It would be uncomfortable to learn new information, process it, then apply that new knowledge to all your memories and beliefs, and so it's easier to fall back into old ideas and prejudices. We like the control. It feels better to accept your own failure rather than face the possibility of failure taking you by surprise. At least when you're steering the ship, you know where it's going, even if that means driving it into an iceberg of self-sabotage. And when we do stuff like this, Brené Brown has a really cool thing that she said that is, I make this story up in my head. So when somebody brings you coffee and you had an idea about them, and you then have this story that you're going to make up, and what's that story going to be? Are you going to make up a new story, or are you going to hang with the old one? The higher up you rise, the further you have to fall. And this fear of ultimately failing is another reason that we partake in self-sabotage, called the imposter syndrome. Our psyche is rooted in the perception that you're not deserving of the success that you've gained so far. In return, you might partake in self-sabotaging behaviors, such as doing the bare minimum, procrastinating, or diverting your attention in order to avoid this fear. Other reasons we might turn to self-sabotaging behaviors are due to familiarity or boredom. We're creatures of habit, but sometimes this means that we choose consistency over our own happiness or contentment. If we're used to feeling or being overlooked, mistreated, or exploited, it can be strangely reassuring to put ourselves in that position over and over again. Excuse me. Even though we know that these roles make us unhappy, we prefer them to the unknown. We might also turn to self-sabotage because we're bored. Sometimes creating drama or inflicting conflict can give us a rush, and being in the middle of the chaos can feel comforting. The good news is that self-sabotage follows a predictable pattern, so we can change it. Self-sabotage follows that predictable pattern. Awareness of it shows up in your life, and how you recognize it when it does show up so that you can take action to nip it in the bud as soon as it shows up. The first step is to think back to previous times you've self-sabotaged in your life, then figure out what point you typically began to indulge in self-sabotaging behaviors and uncover your triggers. For example, you've had a crush on the barista at your local coffee shop for months, and you always chat every time you go in to grab a latte. One day they ask you on a date, but you freeze and come up with an excuse to get out of it. What happened? Somewhere in that exchange, you were triggered. Perhaps as soon as your romantic interest began showing interest back, your brain didn't understand how to comprehend that new information. If your, quote, reality up until now dictates that you aren't worthy of love, but suddenly you receive information that contradicts that reality, your brain sends signals to fight against that cognitive dissonance or discomfort of the new and unknown, and brings you back to familiar thoughts and patterns. Perhaps this means that you detach and become uninterested, suddenly afraid, knowing that your relationship is moving forward and could ultimately fail. Think of self-sabotage as a misdirected form of self-love. Your brain is moving you towards self-sabotaging behaviors because it thinks that it's protecting you from hurt and danger, when in reality, it's also holding you back from your full potential. Fear is an emotion most of us prefer to sweep under the rug instead of working to confront head on. One step you can take to face your inner fears head on is to journal. Next time you realize that you might be partaking in a self-sabotaging behavior, such as procrastinating, delaying, picking fights with loved ones, take a moment to ask yourself, what am I scared of? And why is that scary? Then ask yourself, if that worst case scenario happened, could I handle it? And finally, ask yourself, does this fear outweigh my desires? Once you've taken these steps and actually taken time to consider the situation head on, the fear inside you loses a little bit of power over your psyche. Repeat this activity as needed in order to train your brain to ease out of old thought patterns slowly. Confronting our fears means facing discomfort, and sometimes the truth that we uncover can be an ugly one. Let's take a look at a case study about a woman named Olga, which I think is a very strange picture of a man there, but we're going to talk about Olga. She was always in fear of losing her partner, Jack. She told him all the time that she loved him and that she never wanted him to leave her, but at the same time, she kept picking fights and forgetting to keep her promises to him, like picking him up after work. In order to get to the bottom of this bizarre and seemingly contradictory behavior, Olga was prompted to contemplate the worst case scenario, Jack leaving. She had never thought about this before because she was afraid to let her mind actually think it through. She was asked, "What will you do if he leaves?" And here's her response. "Well, I'd have to learn to live for myself, I guess. I'd have to be independent. I'd be free." The fear that she had been hiding wasn't that Jack secretly wanted to leave her, it was that she wanted to leave Jack. Olga came to this realization and took the time to process her thoughts instead of falling back on old habitual fears. She realized that her definition of a, quote, perfect wife meant someone who acted as an appendage to her husband, a role that she didn't want to play. Subconsciously, because she didn't want to fulfill this role, she began doing things to sabotage her marriage, thus leading her to the fear of its end. Once she realized the roots of her fears and how they played themselves out in her actions toward Jack, she was able to move past her stereotypes of marriage and recognize that her role as a wife didn't have to match up with the ideas that she had in her mind. She was free to forge her own course. Setting small goals will help you feel more accomplished and more in control of your life. There's a particularly helpful way to combat self-sabotaging actions because it fights feelings of low self-worth and keeps you motivated and moving forward in a positive direction. Don't be afraid to make lists. Perhaps take a moment to pick out a planner to write down your notes and thoughts. Start with small obligations, doing laundry, grocery shopping, or picking up dog food. Crossing something off your to-do list is fulfilling in its own weird little way, even if it's everything you have to do and it's just like habitual stuff, but it feels good. Don't fall into the mental trap of harmful assumptions. It's easy to spiral out of control. It's natural to try to analyze and assess people and situations to make sense of our surroundings. The danger lies in allowing your imagination to wander too far, leading to the worst case scenario, which causes anxiety, frustration, and fear. Furthermore, the assumptions you make about the way people feel about you are often reflections on how you feel about yourself. After all, you're getting that harmful material from somewhere, your own self-sabotaging thoughts. If you're feeling ignored, alone, or abused, and your first thought is, they treat me this way because, or they must think that I'm whatever, what you're actually doing is projecting your own feelings about yourself. If this behavior goes unchecked and you don't realize that you're making silly assumptions, you will actually trick your mind into making false judgments about other people. When you can start assuming negative things, you start attracting negative thoughts. To fix this pattern, try and catch yourself, then distract yourself with something else that you enjoy. Keep your days simple and meaningful. Don't let yourself get overwhelmed with things that aren't a priority to you, and don't waste your time on things that don't matter to you. Learn how to say no and start getting used to delegating duties to people around you. Take time for yourself to do the things you enjoy. Do you like cooking? Make sure to set time aside to make yourself a nice meal once a week. Do you enjoy spending time with animals? Carve out an hour to visit or volunteer at the animal shelter this weekend. Doing things that you're passionate about will keep your stress levels down and allow you to focus more on your own goals and motivations. Surround yourself with people who are also doing their best to fight against habits of self-sabotage. If your goal is to start creating more healthy habits, but most of your friends don't have a problem sitting around every night eating takeout, find a buddy to go to the gym with. Then, if and when you do find yourself slipping back in unhealthy habits of the past, you'll have someone to go to for help and inspiration instead of falling backwards. I have an accountability partner that I've had for over 5 years now. And because of the time that we have spent together, keeping one another accountable to our goals, we have become best friends. And I'm really grateful for the privilege that I have of having her in my life. There will be times when you realize that you need to let go of something painful, be it guilt or a toxic relationship. However, it's never easy to let go of something that we've become accustomed to. So we get stuck in the middle of two realities, where we are and where we want to be. Fear of the unknown can hold us back, but we can choose not to let it. So life will bring you pain all by itself. Your responsibility is to create joy, by Milton Erickson. One way to solve this problem is to accept more love into your life, which of course can be difficult if you're feeling unworthy of love. But remember that you're always putting yourself into destructing, self-sabotaging situations. You aren't allowing yourself to expand your worth and reach your full potential. Since you can't control the love you receive from other people, the best place to start is with self-love. And here are a few ways that you can practice self-love. Cook your favorite meal for yourself and don't worry about the calories. Buy yourself some flowers. Sing loudly to your favorite song. Treat yourself to a concert, play, art museum, or music performance. Join a walking group or sign up for a class. Take a hike and pack your favorite snacks for a picnic in nature. Write down some of your favorite quotes or mantras and post them. Plan a potluck with your friends and make some art or create a do-it-yourself project. Do something for you. It is not selfish. It is filling up your bucket so you have more love to give to other people. When you do something you're proud of, dwell on it a little. Relish the experience. It's not narcissistic, it's an act of self-care. If you confronted your boss and finally asked for that promotion, give yourself props because that took guts. Being aware of your accomplishments will boost your mood and make you more self-sufficient. If you're waiting for people around you to congratulate you on your self-worth and self-esteem, then you've given away a key to your own happiness because the thoughts, opinions, and beliefs of others are outside our control. And how many of us are oriented to my worth is attached to how much I accomplish? And so oftentimes it's like our entire life is just one big, huge checkoff list. And as we go through and accomplish something that really took a lot of effort on our part to do, we just kind of go tick, done, move on to the next thing. And we don't take the time to acknowledge and praise ourselves for what we have accomplished. One of the best ways that we can practice self-care and break up with self-sabotage is to take care of our physical body. If you're constantly tired, try researching some natural sleeping supplements. If you're feeling burnt out, pass on that Red Bull that the office supplies you with and cut out caffeine after 3 o'clock. If you're overweight, reassess your diet and physical activity level. If you have chronic pain, look into possible remedies like yoga, acupuncture, or dietary changes. If we ignore our aches and pains, we're not putting ourselves first and we're not showing our bodies the self-respect that it deserves. Shifting years of negative self-talk to positive self-talk is a lot easier said than done and requires you to reprogram your entire mind, but you can do it. Even if you think you're not that critical of yourself, you might be surprised. Most of the time, we're unaware of the unconscious dialogue that goes on in our minds. Here are some tricks you can use to boost positive self-thought. Practice positive affirmations like, I deserve to be happy. I trust my intuition. I am worthy of love. These things are all excellent places to start. And repeat these phrases to yourself when you sense yourself spiraling. Another good one is, what lesson is there in this for me to learn? Think of failures as new opportunities. Sometimes things that seem negative at the onset can actually lead to really awesome things. Sit up straight. Slouching is an easy way to make yourself feel crummy, lazy, and lethargic. Sitting up straight will make you feel more useful, awake, and thoughtful. Avoid negative people. If your cubicle neighbor is always complaining, bring in a pair of headphones and listen to a podcast instead. If you have a friend who always sees the glass half empty, try spending more time with people who are willing to join you on your journey to a more positive outlook on life. Look at the big picture. You got a parking ticket? That's a bummer. But will it matter in a week, a month, a year? Try not to waste precious mental power on things that are out of your control and that really won't matter in the long run. Learn to forgive yourself for your past actions and give yourself a break. When negative thoughts come creeping into your mind, stop them in their tracks. Talk to and counteract them with positive thoughts. Talk to yourself and defend yourself the way you would protect your friend, parent, or sibling. If you start spiraling, interrupt the negativity. This might literally mean walking up to a mirror and giving yourself a pep talk, and that is okay. Try this. Hey, stop that. You know all that negativity isn't helping anyone here, and we can't afford to put ourselves down right now because we've got too much going for us. We've been here before, and we know that this behavior isn't healthy. It may sound silly, but it's helpful. Look right straight into your own eyes and have that conversation with yourself. Sometimes all you need to hear are the right words, and if they're coming out of your own mouth, that's even better. So some of the resources that I used to put this class together came from Psychology Today, How to Be Yourself, Psychology Today about self-sabotage, and your self-sabotaging cognitive dissonance. There's a whole bunch of things that I can give you if you're interested in knowing more about this. So thank you so much for taking time out of your day to join me. And I hope you're able to walk away with some insight on your mind, on how your mind works, as well as some tactics on how to overcome some self-sabotaging habits and behaviors that have a way of presenting themselves every once in a while. And I will leave you with this final thought. Make a conscious effort to be resilient and move forward with your life no matter what hurdles come your way. You are strong, you are intelligent, and you are capable of overcoming the negative thought patterns that your mind has gotten into the habit of building. If you have any further questions, please email me at Michelle with 2 L's at isoulshift.com. Michelle at isoulshift.com. So do you personally have a talent for self-sabotage that you may not even be aware of? Do you tend to focus on the negative? Do you spend a lot of time worrying about the future and what could go wrong? And do you ever feel that all these thoughts might be holding you back from reaching your full potential? So lots of us can relate to these actions. You are not alone, and I have been there too. Behavior is said to be self-sabotaging when it creates problems and interferes with our long-standing goals. When we give in and engage in negative thoughts and actions, we create problems in our relationships, at our place of work, and within ourselves. And maybe you've been telling yourself for years that your lack of luck in romance, career, or other life choices are due to your own unworthiness, lack of ability, or something else. I'm here to remind you that your mind is a powerful place, and you can work very hard to keep you from growing and progressing in the ways that you want it to if you let it. So my goal is to show you that it's possible to overcome these self-sabotaging behaviors and give you the tools you need to get started in making positive change in your life. Get out of your own way, get rid of counterproductive behavior, and learn how to make friends with your own worst enemy, you. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you have a wonderful day, and please reach out to me again at Michelle at isoulshift.com. Thank you.